about this guy. And the picture on the website, he looks like he's possessed by Gozer from Ghostbusters. Do you see his eyes? Like, holy shit.
He looks
sunken eyes.
kind of like Ryan Gosling if he went through a horrible accident. He's about to cry all the time. calls him like
he sees him. All right, to everybody out there, welcome to part 2 of our episode on Super Columbine Massacre RPG. I'm going to try and keep this intro short and sweet, but if you haven't listened to it, I strongly recommend you check out the first half, as this will be a direct follow-up to that. But before we continue on further, Austin has a little statement here from our game creator, Mr. Danny Ladonne. So why don't you open us off with some
This is a very long
wisdom.
statement, and if you want to read more about it, go to columbinegame.com/statement.html.
It's still up there.
Still up there.
This many years later.
He says, somewhere between April 20th, 1999 and September 11th, 2001, America entered into a new, terrifying, and desperate era. Citizens can no longer afford to believe the necessary illusions of modern society. In an age when hastily formed scapegoats and false dichotomies of good and evil run rampant, Super Columbine Massacre RPG dares us into a realm of gray morality with nuanced perspectives of suffering, vengeance, horror, and reflection. In the words of Harris's friend Brooks Brown, there are no easy answers to such a socially indicting tragedy. As humanity teeters precariously on the threshold of collapse, politically, ideologically, and environmentally, the days of comatose media coverage and subservient populace cannot remain. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, through the furious words of malevolent actions, can be understood as the canaries in the coal mine, foretelling of an apocalypse soon for those remaining to ponder their deeds. With Super Columbine Massacre RPG, I present to you one of the darkest days in modern history and ask, are we willing to look into the mirror?
Chris? All right.
That's a lot to
That's a lot to unpack there.
I mean...
By the way, that was Austin Blakesley reading that statement. And this is Chris Antoine's thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know how much I want to say. Because, he's the kind of guy that would look this up and listen to this and then kill me.
I mean, I think he's like 40 now, so hopefully not.
I don't know. That's a bit pretentious.
A bit?
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit like bad poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, you didn't make, one of the greatest games of all time. It's not like you can lean on
You wanted to feel like he made Clockwork Orange.
I don't know. He's trying to pretend like this is some masterpiece of examining some touchy event, but
Listen,
you made it in RPG Maker.
I'm not going to bog down this podcast and read this whole statement, but that is not the height of pretentiousness in the statement. I'll just say that much. He says, for its creator, known for over a year only as the alias Columbine, has been described as a genius, a sick human being, a real philosopher, and even the Antichrist.
What is he, BTK? He's referring to himself in the fucking third person?
Yeah.
Those are all very extreme.
Yeah.
But not just a guy that made a video game, I guess. That wasn't on the list.
I'm sure you can find somebody I've met that's called me the Antichrist. I've never done anything.
So... where we left off last time was
I do have that.
The game had come out and the news had picked it up and the downloads had started kind of exploding.
Yes.
From the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. Not that we're here to talk about sales, but let's dive into the actual, sales.
Donations.
Free thing, donations. But let's talk about the actual response here. By the way, just in case, I'm Randall Beatrice, your host today.
Hi, I'm Austin Blakesley.
I'm a Chris Wanantuano.
You said your name wrong.
You didn't want to give an alias there so our guy wouldn't find you.
Zero Cool.
Yeah. I'm Crush Override, and I'm here with Acid Burn. And
was that one of them?
And if you fuck with us, you're going down.
Acid Burn was Angelina Jolie's character.
I could only remember
Serial Killer. That was
the one. I want to be Serial Killer.
That's Matthew Lillard. So that's the best.
Fuck yeah, Matthew Lillard.
Wait, Matthew Lillard's name in that movie was Serial Killer?
Serial Killer, but cereal, like the breakfast food.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was also in that famous
treasure.
movie
where he played a serial
Scooby-Doo. But this is Hot Button. This is part 2 of our Columbine episode.
What's the quote and scream when he's just like, fucking hurt. That fucking hurt, man.
Yeah, they had all this fake blood all over the set, and it made everything really slippery. So like the other actor goes to throw the phone down and like hang up the phone, and the phone slides out of his hand and smacks Matthew Lillard in the back of the head. And without breaking character, and while he's still hysterically crying, he's just like, "You fucking hit me with the phone, dick." it's so good. And then he picks up the phone, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, Stu, what's your reason? Billy has one. What's yours?" And he just goes, "Peer pressure." My mom's gonna be so mad at me. God, I love that movie.
No, Scream is incredible.
It's so good. All right, so gets into the reaction here. So it was incredibly negative.
Whoa!
Yeah, shocker.
Shocker.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about the actual quality of the game just yet, but boy, was the general mainstream media ready to attack. And a lot of this also includes those personally affected by the shootings too.
Sorry, hold
unsurprisingly and justifiably so.
I would like you to refer to them as the comatose media from now on, please.
Oh, is that right? That's what he called it.
Yeah.
All right. See, now, unlike our other topics that we've talked about here, this one is like probably the least surprising gaming controversy ever to happen.
No shit.
Yeah, like this, but and also this goes without saying, but the hardest one we've probably ever had to do. This is tough, and not just because I'm sober. So
yeah, it's rough. I'll go back and listen to the first episode. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot.
Yeah.
About this game.
And this is kind of, we covered in the first part mostly just the what the game actually is, along with the development, and this is all it's out. It's out there, and this is all going to be kind of the response and the reception and legacy of this thing up to now. So the person I mentioned in the previous episode, I'm sorry, that revealed Danny's identity was also pretty quick to speak about about being against the entire idea of the game itself.
Justifiably so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Saying anyone playing this game can, quote, kill Rachel over and over again. That was his friend. I think his name was Roger. But he was the one who was the friend of that first girl who was killed outside. There was someone else, a father of one of the victims, I think he remained nameless, who also came out expressing his disgust, claiming that the creator is trivializing the actions of 2 murders and the lives of the innocent. But shockingly enough, not everyone was fighting the war against Danny. One survivor of the shooting, named Richard Calstado, who was permanently paralyzed from the waist down after being shot 4 times in the arm, chest, back, and abdomen, did an interview with Kotaku actually showing support for the game after playing it. Yeah, he stated, it probably sounds a bit odd for someone like me to say, but I appreciate the fact that at least to some degree, something like this was made. While he also went on to say that he did take issues with what he saw as glamorization of the shooters, rightfully so. He also believed that it would help open a dialogue about the shooting itself. People certainly
That's about the only
express and
positive
work
thing that
through
could come out
grief
of
in
it.
different ways.
Yeah,
absolutely. This was a hard subject to touch upon for years. And once this was out there in the wild getting downloaded, Columbine kind of became a topic all over again, which may have helped with a lot of the things survivors and victims were trying to express at the time. Like, so like, and also, you know, this person also, what I stated before we even started doing the recording the first episode is that you still fight for their right to be able to make it. And I think like once all the word was getting out to try and pull this thing off the internet, this was somebody who was just like, that's A, not how it works, and B, it's, even if I don't agree with it, it's not something that I'm asking for. At least it does feel like that this was not created for profit. You know.
Yeah.
As for the rest of the press, this thing was pretty universally condemned. Betty Nugent of CNN labeled the game as an example of a subculture that worships terrorists. Bit extreme, but...
Oh, she's talking about the gamers?
Yeah. Others said it was exploitative and a monstrosity. PC World declared the game number 2 on its list of the 10 worst games of all time because of its tastelessness. Even some other reviewers who were behind the game's intent still found it hard to play. Ben Kuchera of Ars Technica said he left the game shaken and that the game could easily be misunderstood. Writing that people who are most likely to gain anything from it will probably never play it. Others felt the message of the game was obscured by the cartoon graphics, while others thought the juxtaposition of them made it more palatable. It's, you know, it's so I understand kind of all sides here.
I get it as far as opening a dialogue, cool.
Yeah.
Making a game to comment on some social thing, cool.
Sure.
We do it all the
And
time
games
with
have done that
comic
before.
books.
Yeah,
we
movies,
do it with
everything.
political cartoons for the last 400 years.
Yes,
you know what I
totally.
mean?
That's a good
like,
example.
I get the idea of making something satirical or making something to try to like get a dialogue going to talk about it, but like I don't know. I feel like I don't know if that was an afterthought for him or not. I don't know enough about this guy.
It's hard
or
to say,
The
because-
thing I feel like
yeah.
in nowadays he could arguably get away with just being like,
More.
I'm just a troll and I made
Yeah.
a game. Like, you know what
That's
I mean?
true.
About
This was a
and he
little
would
before-
get less shit for it.
He probably would. This was actually before that term was sort of coined, like
Yeah.
that was something people were intentionally doing. But what's interesting is that regardless of this response, with positive and negative, he refused to change or alter the game in any way once it was out there, and said it represented his thoughts on the subject at a very particular time. He even went on to encourage other people to rework the game for themselves if they wanted. But like even now, I wonder if his views have changed. You mentioned he's like, how old is he now? He's 36.
Gotta be close to
30
40.
something.
Yeah, he's
36,
going on 40.
37.
Yeah.
So like it's just like it'd be weird because it's like my perspective on things have changed all the time. Like the funny thing is it's like at the right age when I heard you reading that statement, I probably would have like commended
Agreed.
some of the ideas behind his message. Like
Yeah.
you know, like it's not all of them. Like I think I would have ever identified with him, but like I'm sure there was we
Who
all
doesn't?
we all had to fight the establishment time in our lives where I'm sure it was misguided at in some way. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's especially listening to that kind of music, watching those kinds of films. Like it's honestly like ingesting that stuff is totally fine. Like and have like it's just like it's interesting how it shapes us over time.
Yeah.
I don't know. But there were positive reviews of this too. You know, I mentioned the one feedback from that Survivor, but like there were also even critics who accepted the intended message. Like Wired magazine writer Clive Thompson, he appreciated the game's attention to specific narrative details, including the attempt to look into the mind of the two gunmen, whether, you know, it was fully accurate or not. He continued to say that a lot of the satire was more subtle than he expected, with jabs at the participants and gaming culture in general by using the language that we've all come to expect playing games over the years. And that's kind of a funny quote because it was a video game-ass video game. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't going for any type of real immersion or realism at all, clearly, especially where it ends up. But, like, it's weird because it almost feels like you're playing a parody of Final Fantasy VI more so than like a piece of like,
Yeah.
you know, than like a vision of somebody's like thing because of just how bizarre it is.
I was gonna say maybe it could have honestly suffered a bit from just being like not as
Not as focused of a thing, yeah.
not as focused. You know what I mean? Maybe he had good intentions, but like it was just poorly executed. Whether what kind of place he was in,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
what kind of resources he
And
had
it's-
at the time.
And not that we're like reviewing it as a game, but it's like there are things about the game that I admittedly do like. Like, you know, I think like if you would have kept that tone as dour as kind of how it starts, like that would be like unplayable experience, because like I actually think that a lot of the people in support of him were kind of like into the idea of trying to make it accessible for people rather than just having it be right off the bat hard to digest. Like,
Yeah, but it's not like he made a fucking leapfrog game about mass shootings. Like,
well, no, then that would go too far in the other direction, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like I'm not saying he did a good job, but it's almost a Herculean task anyway. Like it's you know, like he's the one who chose that as a setting. Like
Fair
it's
enough, yeah.
you know, and granted, like I agree with you that I don't think he did the best job with it, but like he tried what nobody else did, I guess. So there's that. Another reviewer, Paul Severett of the Courier Mail, told those that found the game offensive to quote lighten up. Not the most delicate response
Yeah,
there,
no.
Paul. So
It's so funny to like reflect on this, where we are at as a society now.
yeah.
Like to think about if something like this came out now.
Yeah.
yeah.
Some Steam trash or something.
Yeah. My God, because this was
I mean, there was that game Active Shooter
yeah.
that was supposed to come out last year on Steam and got so many petitions. It was a first person shooter where you shot up a school, and I think it was right after the Parkland shooting in Florida. There was like 200,000 people signed a petition to pull it from Steam, and it worked, and it did. I think
honestly,
the company
probably for the
Acid
better.
still is trying to release it called what do they change it to? Standoff.
Standoff.
And they're going to just sell it on their website. It looks like a piece of shit. Like
Yeah.
it looks like a
Insane,
bad
dude.
game. Like
There is a way to cure.
there is, yeah.
Video games are already going to be a hard medium to portray some sort of tough topic message.
Yeah,
anyway.
I'm more offended because it just looks like a cheap cash grab for edgelords to play. I don't know.
Yeah, for real.
It's like the hatred effect, but You can make a good game.
Did you ever play? So it's funny. This game, Super Columbine Massacre, came out in 2005.
Yeah, it's better than all the other ones that have tried.
This was right around. If you listen to our Hot Button episode, you'll know this guy. This is right around the same time that Jack Thompson came out with his. Do you remember
I'm sure
his
this was a
contest or whatever?
No.
So he wrote an open letter, and we might do an episode on him later. Who knows?
Yeah,
but
I would love to.
He wrote an open letter to the ESA, the people that run. Like the video game lobby, the people that run the E3.
Right. I think maybe I do remember this.
Yeah. He wrote a letter and he's like, how would you feel if like a shooter came in and shot up E3 or something like that? And he's like, somebody make a video game where there's a kid.
Oh, holy shit. I do remember this.
There's a kid who becomes a shooter because he gets seduced by the violence of video games.
Yeah, he plays too many violent video games.
And his dad goes to E3 and shoots the place up and kills a bunch of violent video game things.
Nobody made that game, right?
No.
Yeah.
So they did.
Oh, boy.
A lot of people responded because he said he would donate $10,000 to the charity.
And he never fucking did.
Of the CEO of Take-Two's Choice.
Yes.
Because he was all against Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
And Derek Yu, who people may know as the creator of Spelunky.
Right. Did he make something?
He made a game called I'm Okay, a Murder Simulator, which was just like a Mega Man style game where you're just running around E3.
Okay.
And then he's like, you have to kill the creators of violent video games. So at the end, Derek Yu like put himself as the final boss or whatever as like a message. And he made it, and like people responded a lot better to that one,
right? Yeah,
because
he made that so he would donate that money.
Yeah, and Jack Thompson never did. Then eventually, the people that made Penny Arcade, the two guys that made Penny Arcade and run PAX,
right? Yeah,
Mike and Jerry, I think their names are. I don't remember their last names.
It's Mike and Jerry.
But they donated $10,000 in his place.
Right. Okay. In his name, I think.
And then Jack Thompson tried to get them investigated for something criminal or something like that.
God, that dude sucks so much.
But yeah, like it's funny because this is not the only video game made at that time, like a 2D satirical.
That's true. And I'll get into some other games that were also made in successor to this as well, not by him, but. So the professor I mentioned in our previous episode, Ian Bogust, he was the one who blogged about the game that kind of made its way into news outlets finding about. He summed up his thoughts by saying, the game is not fun. It is challenging and difficult to play. Not technically difficult, but conceptually difficult, and we need more of that. So,
Right.
Yeah, and...
That's what I'm saying. The idea is fine.
Yeah.
I like the idea.
I mean, this is 05, so people have done this...
It's more...
Probably...
It's more
with
in the
more
grand
respect
scheme,
and delicacy since then.
The grand scheme of things, where it's like I read that statement at the beginning from this guy, and it's like I don't think this guy is the
one to do
it.
Yeah.
But this goes back. If you haven't listened to our No Russian episode, we talk a lot about that.
Right.
Here.
Yeah.
And then
there's
like
the people to do.
There is a place.
And then we talked about the games that have done that.
Yeah.
Did that right.
There is a place for making a game that makes you play through it and sort of question why.
Yeah.
But this delusional loner guy and the creators of Call of Duty are not the people that should be making games that make us reflect on ourselves as a society.
That's why it's like I want to like the game more than I do, obviously, but I think I just like some of the takes and the responses to it more than like...
Who else is going to make it, though? That's where you get into the... That's
right, you got to
where
be
the
kind
real thing comes
of...
from.
Yeah, and... It takes a particular type of person to want to make that.
He's the perfect guy.
Yeah, I don't like this guy, but kudos to him for putting up with all of this and then just being like, I made the game.
I'm sure it was
it's
a
out
nightmare.
there. I'm not changing it.
And I do want to emphasize that like the people who did get to have that dialogue with him did say that those were positive experiences.
Yeah.
But even if his philosophy is muddled. The other professor that he emailed, the one at Emerson College, his name is David Kochembra, agreed with him, commenting that the controversy should be that there aren't more games like Super Columbine Massacre RPG, in that it's demanding and artistically innovative, which those things can still be said true about that game. As for Danny's thoughts on the criticism, even with some of the support, the attacking on him still commenced at quite the degree. Yeah. And I'm sure after one too many people probably told him to kill himself, he took his rebuttal to his own personal blog and posted, I'm going to read this from him, and then you guys can say your thoughts. I think everyone who disses the Columbine RPG is gutless. Most haven't played the game or have played it with such conceptions that they're blinded to the genius, the honesty, the beauty of its social commentary. Super Columbine Massacre RPG is riddled with design flaws and has mediocre graphics by 1995 standards. The maker of the game admits this, but it regardless is a work of art. It puts you in the mindset of the killers and provides a very clear suggestion of why they did what they did. They were enacting an ideological demonstration through a terrorist act, and the game shines light on this as an indictment of the American dream and way of life painfully close to the main nerve. There you have it.
He had me in the first sentence, and then like you can't call yourself like your product of genius. Like the whole point of if you genuinely are creating something that's going to talk about some horrible event in some meaningful way and get a dialogue started, you must be free of appreciation. Like you have to be humble. You can't not be humble.
Yeah.
Like there's no way.
I completely agree. I think he was just fucking pissed, and then
and fair enough.
Fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with Chris. It's like if you are going to be the one to be like hold a mirror up to society and be like, look at what you are. This was not like the person playing it, but like America as a whole is like, this was your doing, that kind of ideology. Like, it's like, yeah, but then you can't be like, and I'm the only genius that came up with this. All you pussies are too scared to make something like this. Like, no, you're...
And sorry,
you must have.
You're shooting your own message in the foot.
You really are.
Right
and I copied this. I copied this from somebody who also copied it, so it was interjected with their own kind of thing in the middle. But that those were his words about himself. Because I don't know if that blog message is still up anymore.
Okay.
And I'm sure he hit the breaking point. Again, not defending that at all. I feel the same way about that post that you guys do, but I think it was just very much like I'm trying to see from his perspective, and I'm sure he was just getting message after message of people telling him to go die, and I think he finally was just like, fucking...
Yeah.
But,
if people are
not the right way to do it.
If people are telling you to go die, your response isn't, I'll never die, I'm a genius. It's not the best response.
No. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the pushback with the most obvious example, I guess, being something called Slamgate.
That sounds dope.
Yeah.
I want to go.
This was around the time that everybody just added gate onto every gaming controversy whatsoever.
Around the time?
Oh, that is still going. Puddlegate is real. Yeah. But in October of 2006, later that year, Sam Roberts, the director of the Guerrilla Game Maker competition at Slamdance, an annual film festival that focuses on emerging and upcoming artists of independent projects, emailed Danny encouraging him to submit the game for the contest. Danny agreed, and the game was even selected as one of the competition's finalists in December of that year. He saw that all forms of art could be valid tools for societal exploration, even the painful topics like school shootings.
I agree with that statement.
I do too. That's from the director.
Yeah, all forms of art should be able to, have some message, whether it's bullshit or something, talking about something serious. Like I agree with that statement.
Yeah, I do too.
Maybe he got a bit of, maybe he just got a bit of like. A bit fool.
Maybe. I mean, however, though, I'm sure you guys can predict that this isn't going to go the way that this guy thinks it's going to, because it wasn't long after this that the event's organizer, Peter Baxter, announced the removal of the game from the festival, banning it from being a selection in the competition at all, claiming that this was because of the threat of possible sponsor withdrawal, lawsuits from those affected from the actual shooting, or the use of those featured copyrighted materials.
That's the one I agree with.
Yeah, with such as the music and the sprites of Bart Simpson and stuff. Though, obviously, the biggest quote here in this was also Mortal Grounds, which he didn't even have to say that. Yeah, because that's where the blowback from this came from, because he could have very much just been like, hey, like this features too much copyrighted materials that we can't promote.
Yeah,
like,
and then
legally.
there just would have been a discussion behind the scenes.
Sure.
About like that's not why they really did
it's like
it.
You can't play all that music and stuff. Yeah. But instead, he later did deny that sponsor pressure and gave a more personal reason, all of which surrounded the game's setting and central themes. Yeah. So people saw that as a personal attack, because it kind of was, but I get where I'd hate to be in his position too. But this announcement marked the first time that the festival had ever pulled a jury-selected game or content in general, even on their film competitions, like leading to the name Slamgate by the gaming press. That's where this started to get out there. Following this, other indie developers were not happy and expressed their support in protest by removing their games from the competition as well, along with the withdrawal of the USC Interactive Media Division, who was one of the main sponsors of the event, ironically.
They removed themselves because they removed Super...
So he said, hey, we got to remove this game. It might affect our sponsors. And then when he did remove the game, one of the sponsors was like, that's fucked up. We're pulling out. Now... The other devs included some pretty now well-known figures in gaming. In fact, by this point, half of the finalists were pooled, including Castle Crashers was there that year, pooled. The game Flow was pooled, Everyday Shooter, and Braid, where the creator Jonathan Blow said, Super Columbine Massacre lacks compassion, and I find the artist's statement disingenuous, but despite this, the game does have redeeming value. It does provoke important thoughts, and it does push the boundaries of what games are all about. It is composed with more of an eye towards art than most games. Clearly, it belongs at the festival.
Never in my life have I agreed more
Jonathan
with Jonathan
Blow.
Blow.
Yeah, that's like the first time. I was like, I can't believe I'm quoting him in a positive way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to get into this. But
Also, side note, Castle Crashers is an amazing game.
Oh, yeah.
So that would have won the contest anyway.
Okay. I'm curious. I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to think it's not like this, but also humans we suck sometimes.
We suck sometimes.
That he made this game because he was like, he got the wrong impression of these people, whether because he just has twisted ideals or because he was convinced that way by some media or something like that. You know what I mean? Which is hard for me to believe almost because of his critical talk about the media. But regardless, he makes this game because it's like some message to him like, all right, A, I'm trying to be edgy. B, I want this game to be made so, people can see I was a loner, this is like a thing. Let's talk about it. In the background, sure, maybe we can have a dialogue. Yeah. And then when all these people are like, he's just trying to have a dialogue, he's like, yeah. And then just ran with that.
He got pedestaled a little bit for sure.
Yes, and I feel like that pedestaled went to his head, but I don't know. Even if I was pedestaled for something, I wouldn't immediately break out the "I'm a genius" and you guys.
I would love to have a conversation with him, but it is definitely like this is weird because a lot of the other controversies that we've addressed on the show so far are very cut and dry with how we feel. And I keep stumbling over my word every other sentence because even I almost am changing my mind on certain things after I wrote this script. You know what I mean? Because I'm reading it out loud and thinking about it while we're discussing it, and you guys are bringing points that I'm kind of like.
I think an interesting thought experiment here is to be like, are there documentaries on Columbine?
Yeah, sure. There's bowling for Columbine.
Oh fuck! I forgot about that. Yeah. See, that's a perfect fucking example.
That is the most,
because
holy shit, that's even more misguided than this game. And this game makes no sense at all.
This guy might have had misguided intentions, I guess, but that documentary was produced by Hollywood people, and it was nominated for shit.
Yeah, I've won the Academy Award that year, I believe.
And that fucking misinformed everybody just as much about them being bullied. It shows celebrities being like, well, these guys were bullies, and nobody asked them about. I think Marilyn Manson.
That's a good interview, the one with Marilyn Manson, though, because they tried to pin him. The one with I think it's not Trey Parker, it's Matt Stone.
It's a great quote, but then you learn about Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, and you're like. They're not. That's not who. That's not who they were. You're defending the wrong people.
They are, but it sucks because they're. I just more meant that he was being set up to flunk that interview and then responded in a very positive way. Yes. But it is hard to say because there are moments of that documentary that are pretty brilliant, where they talk about how the biggest problem. Or not the biggest problem, but they do talk about things like state of fear, which is so much more affecting than violent media in any way. But like you said, like, God, fuck, what isn't that? And because I agree, fuck the NRA.
Yeah.
But like, what is it that he like when he goes to like Kmart and like is attacking minimum wage employees for just selling?
I want to return the bullets in this kid's spine, and the guy that's making $6 is like, let me get my manager.
At the end, he puts the photo of the girl, the picture of the girl down, and it's just like, that's.
It's like I don't want to keep attacking this guy because this guy had something to say, and I think whether or not he said it in the way that he wanted to, it did provoke a dialogue, and it did like games are an interesting medium because it's certainly like he obviously like wrote this from the mindset of that statement that we read at the beginning. He I guess. I don't know if that was satirical too or not, but it seems like he had a very similar outlook on the world where it's like everybody's wrong but me. But like the fact that you have to play through it yourself and not just watch a documentary, which is someone else's opinions being presented to you.
Right. There's no such thing as an unbiased person.
It's very interesting because whether or not you agree with the artist creating it, when you're playing a video game, you can look at it and sort of form your own opinions because it's more open-ended than a film.
There's much more different interpretations of
That's what I'm saying. I don't want to believe he's just like some pretentious asshole. I want to believe he did it with the intention to do what happened.
And that's possible too. It's so hard to tell. And that's kind of what makes this episode so fascinating and also so frustrating. But it's, and as time goes on, some of these things change too. Because the funny thing is like a lot of this is a reflection of that conversation in 2005. And that conversation in 2005 may not look the same in 2019. No. So it's... But at this point, this is where Jonathan Blow, and the other developers like Behemoth sent an open letter to the festival encouraging the reinstatement of the game to keep with the event's trailblazing efforts. Despite these protests, Baxter refused to change his mind, citing consideration for the shooting victims and their families, while Danny responded to this by telling the other finalists that he was going to attend the festival anyway and distribute copies of the game around instead. I guess he burnt physical, probably... CDs and was distributing them that way. Yeah. Now, acknowledging that all the withdrawals of the finalists kind of compromised the entire competition, the director I mentioned earlier, Roberts, allowed the attendees to vote on whether or not any prizes would be awarded, and they decided not to. So there was no cash grant given to the winner that year. Huh. Brian Fleming...
Do we know who won?
I'm not sure.
Rough. I mean, that's just it always sucks for
Yeah, I mean, I doubt
caught up.
That's actually an interesting thing. So this is actually kind of a funny tidbit here too. Brian Fleming, he's a filmmaker and director of The God Who Wasn't There, which I've heard of, I've not seen. Saw Danny's demo of SCM RPG for short. I'm trying to think of a way to shorten this down, or I don't have to read this full title the whole time. I enjoyed it when it started. Now I'm sick of saying all these words. He was showing this game outside the festival while Brian was attending for his film that was also being screened that same year. And he convinced two fellow Slam Dance film jurors to award the game a special jury prize for Best Documentary. Huh. An unofficial award not endorsed by the festival itself, but still something. And they even planned to present it to Danny until Baxter informed Fleming that he could not present the award due to, quote, music clearance issues. There you go. And refused to allow it. According to Danny, Fleming really tried to hold his ground until eventually being persuaded to back down. But that was the end of our Slamgate chapter.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So a little update. January 26, 2007, the date the Game Awards were to be presented, a panel discussion with the remaining finalists resulted in the withdrawal of an official jury selection for all finalists. No awards were handed out, and the competition has not been held since.
Holy shit.
Damn, it's fucking destroyed the whole
didn't know that. Yeah. That's quite a legacy
and
for this thing.
Slam Dance is apparently still going on to this day, but it's just a film festival now.
Wow. They were doing that gaming competition for several years, too. Mm-hmm. Wow. All right. Unfortunately, the end result of this, the Slamgate kerfuffle, boondoggle, whatever you want to call it, didn't really help him with bad word of mouth around this game that was already there already. Yeah. And to make matters much worse, a new problem arose. I think Austin may have referenced this shooting in the previous episode, but a few months prior to the competition controversy in September, there was a shooting at Dawson College in Quebec, Montreal, Canada, where things like that very rarely happen. But perpetrator Kim Veer Gill randomly shot 20 people in the school cafeteria, fatally killing one before turning the gun on himself after being shot in the arm by police. The Toronto Sun later came out that Kim Veer self-reported playing Super Columbine Massacre on the one website that he frequented. I guess there was maybe a blog or image board. And that story was soon picked up by the media and then reported wildly, bringing the game right back into the controversial
to be honest,
limelight
probably
once again.
inconsequential.
Totally inconsequential.
Like, just that guy just happened to play that fucking game, just like any other psychopath might fall of any other.
We've already
myriad of
seen
things.
this.
So-
before.
It's like Marilyn Manson was listened to.
Exactly.
What's very
exactly.
interesting
Nice,
is,
like-
so I'm going to read his statement
about this.
on the Dawson shooting.
Okay.
Because it's very short.
Yeah.
He says, "To the public, I am, like most, saddened by the news of the recent shooting at Dawson College. I extend my condolences to those affected by this painful event. Please refer to the artist's statement," and he links to the one I read earlier,
I was about to
"for the
say,
game's intent.
Pretty respectful.
For further questions, please contact me here," and it's a link to his email.
Yeah.
And then he says, "In the press I've been getting lately, I have tried to articulate very clearly that Columbine was a wake-up call, not just for our society, but for me in particular, as I was once headed down a similar road. I have now found other outlets, such as games, filmmaking, and theater. Unfortunately, those like Klebold, Harris, and apparently Gill did not." Danny Ladonne.
That's not the worst quote. I still think he kind of needs a PR guy to touch up spots. But,
Maybe.
but for the most part.
It's weird that he links to the artist's statement, though.
Which kind of
because
almost seems against the...
maybe he made that statement when he came out with the game, and he's like, "I'm not changing it." But
Yeah,
it seems
yeah.
like
Yeah, he wasn't changing the game either.
maybe the discussions around him releasing the game have changed his mind.
Right, yeah. Because upon hearing these reports, because, he and this is probably where I assume they got it, because he said, he said he put his email in that statement, but one of those injured in the shooting contacted Danny, telling him to take the game down, to which he expressed his reaction to the shooting and renewed media attention towards him and his game in a formal interview a week later, bluntly saying, "If one is interested in making something for the public to view, be it a painting, a book, an album, a film, or a video game, should the possible harm that may come out of this work be grounds for its suppression from society. This is, in a sense, pre-crime. If you believe in what you're doing and want to express yourself, the expression should be primarily, and any interpretations that come after must always remain of secondary importance to the creation of the work itself. On another level, the entire correlation between the Dawson College shooting and my game is unfounded. What else did Kim Veer like? Black clothes, goth music, pizza? If anything, the Dawson College shooting is proof positive that games like Super Columbine Massacre should be made until video games are no longer among the usual suspect for homicidal rages. The public needs to be more careful. The public needs to more carefully consider why interactive electronic media is somehow the manufacturer of Manchurian candidates."
Now that's that's the dude who created the game said that?
Yeah.
That's probably about the most well thought out
Yeah.
thing he said so far.
He's getting
to
a
be
little
honest.
wiser, yeah, or he's choosing his words a little more clearly, because this was the first time that people were saying that your game was responsible for hurting someone rather
Which
than
it's not.
It's not at all. But
yeah.
I'm just saying, I think maybe that is something clicked in his mind to change his tone a little more.
Yeah.
We talked about it before, not on this podcast, but we have talked about it, the three of us. And it's it's very, the most interesting thing that I'm think us as a society will never come to an agreement on is that you can create things like, to use the examples we used in our conversation, American Psycho, Fight Club.
But, yeah.
What was the one you mentioned earlier?
Oh, I mentioned Natural Born Killers.
Natural Born Killers. You can create things like that,
Falling Down, God Bless America,
as a lens, sort of. And when somebody watches a film like American Psycho and says
to be at war with society.
"This dude's awesome,"
Yeah. You clearly don't get it.
I feel like I get it. Then you're like, you don't, because he's the villain of the movie.
Yes,
but it's is the who's the guy that wrote American Psycho the book? It's he also wrote Less Than Zero. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, is it his fault for people misinterpreting his work?
Right. Yeah.
And it's we've talked a lot in this episode about it's sometimes hard to interpret work. We still really don't know how to interpret Super Columbine Massacre RPG as a topic.
And as hard as it is to believe, mass killers still like things.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's whenever they're anytime something like this happens, then they confiscate their hard drive arrive, they go into their house, and they're like, he's got a poster for Mass Effect on the wall. You know,
Yeah.
like it's like
If Super Columbine Massacre RPG never happened, they would have found something else that this kid liked, and they would have blamed it on that, I'm
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
And it's a horrific event.
Well, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Blaming something immediate
I mean,
rather than
he's-
digging into the problem.
I think his statement on the thing, which he said is like the most articulate he's been, kind of.
Yeah.
That could easily be interpreted as like, hey, it's not my fault just because I made this game that analyzes a subject that's very similar
Yeah.
or something. And it's hard to say that he's right, but he's right. And it's not even
yeah.
like...
And at this point, there's already been tons of like dramatic movies made about Columbine, not even done in a documentary, like that.
Yeah.
Zero. I don't remember whatever that shitty Gus Van Sant one was, but there's a bunch out there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a sensitive topic, and I think people just want to find anything to latch onto to try and make sense of something that doesn't
Makes sense.
make sense.
Yeah.
Like you're like, that's the funny thing. It's like why we're fascinated with things like serial killers and dictators and things like that. It's because it's just like you're never gonna actually see into the mind of them because
Yeah.
you're not a psychopath. Like
It's like you can make your work of art as nuanced and clear as possible on what your intentions are.
and someone will still
Somebody will misinterpret it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You can
Some
make
of
a
the-
thing.
Some of the movies that take the biggest stance on anti-violence are incredibly violent.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
It's tough. So the controversy continues on into 2007, where at this point in our chapter, I'm going to talk about, like, you know, this guy, pretty divisive figure we've had of our stories so far in some ways. But I'm going to talk about a big asshole here, so it's to unite everybody. In 2007, some different kind of beef came up with involving Danny, but it's a lot different than you might think. On May 12th, developer Ryan Lambourne uploaded a flash game to Newgrounds.com titled VTech Rampage. I actually remember when this came out on the site. An action shooter released mere weeks after the Virginia Tech massacre, where undergraduate Swung Hao Cho, I'm about to apologize for not pronouncing his name correctly, but fuck him, horrifically gunned down 49 people, killing 32 before, again, taking his own life with a self-inflicted shot to the head. This game finds you playing as Cho, similar to Super Columbine Massacre. However, this time, apparently, and you can tell because of the time frame as well, it was only created for the purpose of being offensive without any redeeming value, according to the quotes around the game by the creator himself. Along with what sounds like mocking from words from Ryan, stating things like, he professed sympathy for Cho and said that he was a target of bullying in high school himself. So remember earlier when we mentioned the troll idea?
Yeah.
Well, now you have somebody doing that blatantly and saying that that's why they're doing it. And it's hard to tell if it's a direct attack on Danny, but he also continued adding on, I think this was in the post for the game on Newgrounds. I said, nobody listens to you unless you've got something sensational to do. That's why I feel sympathy for Cho. He had to go that far. Basically, this dude sucks.
Yeah.
He's not even clever in his satire, nor his, you know. And it gets worse. He posted on the official site for the game as well, saying that he would take the game off Newgrounds if he received donations of $1,000. $2,000, and he would pull the whole thing down from the main site as well. $3,000, and he would officially apologize for making it.
Oh my god. I think back
Fucking
everything I said about
scumbag.
the guy
Yeah.
that made Super Columbine.
Yeah.
Because in the last episode, I made a comment about how you can tell when he stopped updating the website, but he also has a statement on the Virginia Tech shootings.
Does he? Okay, because let me get to this one quick part
Yes.
where he tries to contact this guy. So it's so funny. So our boy Danny, needless to say, got pretty annoyed when outlets started comparing that game to his. Even posting on his website, naming out the hostage note tactic of release and asking about how maybe a game can accomplish more with the subject matter than VTech Rampage does. Danny even later stated that he sent a personal email to Ryan, acting sympathetic at first, but then Ryan only responded him with insulting profanities about how the two games had completely different motivations and were not comparable in the slightest. That game, by the way, still up and running.
No.
Yeah, to this day, along with his 2013 sequel, The Slaying of Sandy Hook Elementary.
no.
Oh my
Fucking great. Although he supposedly claimed that the second one was created to show support for better gun laws, but
Fuck off.
Yeah. Fuck you.
But what's in Danny's thing?
This one's a lot longer
Okay.
than the Dawson one.
In case our story needed more of a villain.
It says, the question I've been asked, I'm paraphrasing here because it's kind of long. The question I've been asked so often lately is, will you be making a game out of the Virginia Tech shooting? My answer is, I will not be. I will not be because it has not been something that I am personally connected to. The shooting at Columbine, which hit so close to home for me literally and figuratively during my sophomore year of high school, was not only an American tragedy in the broadest sense, but also a clarion call for change in my own life. Having said this, one might ask if I think an interactive project, a video game about the shooting of Virginia Tech can be made. My answer is absolutely. Societies throughout history have dealt with pain, tragedy, and suffering with art in a multitude of forms, and ours is no exception. There will be poems about the shooting, there will be books about it, films about it, paintings about it, and indeed I do not believe the medium of interactive electronic media should be excluded from exploring the sorrows and challenges of the human experience. Some have probed further, suggesting that Super Columbine Massacre offered something very valuable to those who approached it, and I think
He's getting better at these.
and that I should nonetheless consider making a game from the Virginia Tech Massacre on egalitarian grounds. Some people think my work has value. Relative personal identification aside, one of the main reasons I could not make a Virginia Tech Massacre game is much more emotional. After reading all of Cho's writing that has been released, I have a vague glimpse at just how profoundly disturbed and depressed this guy was. When I made Super Columbine Massacre, I spent 6 months getting into the heads of Eric and Dylan, suffered from minor depression myself as a result. This is akin to an actor playing a very sinister role. For me, developing Super Columbine Massacre often meant going into dark, frightening places, and frankly, I'm not sure I could ever go there again. The psychological toll was more than I had imagined. Maybe people who first hear about me think I'm some warped sicko that was gleefully recreating a shooting at Columbine. In truth, it was prolonged, painful, and perhaps necessary exorcism for me.
Wow.
I don't think I could trench myself that deeply into something like that again. Maybe someone else can, but the weight of such an undertaking is significant.
I'm kind of coming back around now. Yeah, I mean, once you have an entire career out of making statements to controversies, you get better at it. But he's becoming a little bit more sensitive, especially maybe when he sees a figure out there who is openly mocking him and his ideas. Then maybe that reflection has made him choose his words more carefully. But yeah. So our story is mostly going to be coming to an end here. One thing I wanted to bring back from earlier regarding Slamgate was that incident and a supportive meeting with that filmmaker I mentioned, Mr. Brian Fleming, was I think actually kind of what inspired Danny to produce that Playing Columbine documentary I mentioned about him in our previous episode. And his experiences following that, like the release of that game, are all kind of very much covered in it. I actually have not seen the whole thing. I've seen clips. I am interested in kind of checking it out at some point. But as for Danny, after all this, the results of all this controversy and interaction kind of led him to become sort of an unwitting spokesperson for the games industry, which is good if he's getting better at kind of making these statements. Often facing the medium's opponents in debates and forums. He used to travel around a little more to conferences. I think it's just as time goes by, behind, he's probably focused on other things. I don't know how active he is today, but this went on for quite a while. And Keith Stewart of The Guardian wrote that despite being confused and tawdry, Super Columbine Massacre symbolizes a growing understanding that video games actually have more to say than just shoot the enemies and pick up health. While authors Andreas John Sudman and Ralph Stockman consider controversial video games such as Super Columbine Massacre RPG and the Grand Theft Auto Hot Coffee mod evidence of socio-political tensions between gamers and older generations. That game and others like it continue to be at the center of the video games as art debate, a conversation that we have all had here numerous times and probably will continue to have here on Hot Button for episodes to come. And more on if you want to check out more on Hot Coffee, then we do have an episode on that as well. I think it's our second. But the last one I have here is Game Sutra later credited Super Columbine Massacre and its Slamgate controversy as having two highly positive and far-reaching effects, probably beyond what Danny even originally intended. Gamer Sutra later credited Super Columbine Massacre and its Slamgate controversy as having two highly positive and far-reaching effects, probably beyond what Danny ever intended. The first being that it forced print game journalism to focus on the issue, and second, that the evangelization of the notion that video games can be as meaningful and important as other media, even if the example is offensive to the sensibilities of most Americans.
Yeah.
To win is to lose, but to play is to experience an enrichment that cannot be scored.
That's a good quote.
Yeah. So, final thoughts. What do you guys think? Thank you, obviously, for everybody for sticking with us on that. That was a big one.
Yeah.
It was a big task. But we'll try and lighten things up maybe in the next one a little bit. But I thought this was a fascinating one. I had a lot of fun, actually. I hate saying the word fun, but I was very enthralled by the research of this and ended up kind of on some deep dives into looking into things that I don't maybe spend as much time looking into. So
the game is an enigma.
Yeah, actually, I do spend a lot of time
the
looking
guy,
into this
the guy
stuff.
that
But
made it is an enigma.
Yeah, I'm still confused about how to feel about it.
yeah, and it's.
Part of me
I
was-
wish there was a better of a bow to wrap on top of everything, but it's just kind of is what it is.
Maybe I'll email and be like, hey, you want to be on a podcast?
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
Maybe we'll do a follow up if I can get an interview with this guy. We
Yeah.
can interview him.
He spent a lot of time answering emails very personally. It's like I bet enough time has gone by that he's not being contacted very often, but also I don't know how much
Like
close to his life that this is.
I read
anymore.
that statement on the game, and I was like, man, fuck you, man. Like, you're just sitting here and shitting on society. You look like a main protagonist in a sequel to Fight Club. And then I read his statements and quotes after people criticize his work for contributing to other things.
Yeah.
And he seemed so much more articulate.
Yeah.
And obviously he's a lot older now, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little torn. Like, half of me thinks that he just did this just to be intentionally...
I mean, he wasn't the VTech fucking guy.
subversive. Yeah. But then the other part of me is like, maybe he did actually want to get a message out, and it just didn't.
Maybe didn't know how to do it exactly.
Yeah, or he did that to the best of his ability.
Sure.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I really don't know how to feel.
And
about it.
it's like
I agree with the things that come out of it, as in like having a conversation, and video games are art, and video games shouldn't be held
it's hard.
responsible for
This
things
game
like that.
earns its right to
Obviously-
exist and for people to play it.
Yeah, obviously all those themes resonate, but like the way it's gone about and who did it is still up for debate in my head.
It's a fucking roller coaster, and our kind of summary is still pretty inconclusive. But like that's kind of our thoughts on it, and I would talk endlessly about this if anyone else approached it, because it's just like any new like views or insights would listen. This is a very interesting story. But I think that's going to do it for today, and that is part 2. Next week we'll be back with an entirely different topic.
Hopefully a lighter one.
Hopefully a little lighter one. And if you want to do some plugs there, some
So you got it?
promotions.
I got
You did
it.
it last time.
Yeah. So if you discovered this
You got
podcast
this down to a
randomly,
T.
you can follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter at HotButtonCast. If you like the podcast, you can subscribe to it on iTunes. You can subscribe to it on Spotify, Google Play,
And if you don't like it, subscribe to it anyway.
Stitcher, wherever else fine podcasts are sold. And
Coconuts, Tower Records, Sam Goody,
yeah, Suncoast Video.
Suncoast Video.
You can...
Sorry, I'll stop.
Can you run a podcast at Blockbuster? They got the
Yeah.
They got podcasts now down at the Hollywood Video.
You can, if you have anything to say, DM us on Twitter. We'll respond.
Yeah, maybe we were talking
Even if
about,
you're a jerk.
we were talking about the idea of, at least I was a little bit, about setting up a Reddit and doing maybe an episode discussion if it's something like this.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many people are listening, but
And I want to do a live one at some point,
yeah,
too.
Yeah.
if you're willing to discuss,
we can,
we got a lot of things in the.
We can talk about that. But yeah, review us on iTunes.
Thank you for putting up with
Have
my
a great day.
stuttering.
Stay
Yo,
hydrated.
stay
hydrated.
gaming. Yeah. Later, YouTubers.
Smash that like button. We out.